There are people who walk through life cloaked in the quietest elegance of false virtue. They laugh with you, cry with you, share your table, and at times, they hold your hand so tightly you believe their grip is comfort. But beneath that mask of warmth, lies a silent machinery, one that crafts your downfall with a smile, stitches your weakness into their narrative, and drinks your trust like sweet nectar. You never see the moment they slip in. You only feel the erosion, the strange hollowness where your confidence used to live. They never raise their voice. They don't need to. Their power is the suggestion, the sigh, the well-placed silence that makes you question yourself. They dismantle your certainty with surgical grace, piece by piece, until your own reflection begins to look foreign. These are not simply toxic people. They are architects of delusion, convinced of their sacred place above others, immune to error, untouchable in their own minds. Their weapon is not anger, but an unwavering conviction that they are the truth, and you, only a reflection distorted by your inability to understand. Have you ever stood in the shadow of someone who never apologizes? Someone who turns your every feeling into a flaw, your every doubt into disloyalty? The tragedy is that they often come wrapped in titles that give them authority. Partner, parent, friend. They don't shout. They smile. And that smile is more terrifying than any scream, because it carries no recognition of wrongdoing, only pity for your confusion. Carl Jung warned us of these souls inflated beyond recognition, possessed by myths of their own importance. To them, disagreement is not dialogue, it's defiance. And your pain. It's either your fault or your weakness. They will make you feel that your resistance is betrayal, your desire for autonomy a personal attack. And while you struggle with guilt and overthinking, they glide through life untouched by introspection. You may already know them. You may have shared laughter with them. You may have defended them when your own gut whispered something was wrong. Because this isn't about intellect, it's about something far more primitive, a hunger for certainty. And they offer it, not as a gift, but as a leash. What makes them dangerous is not their strength, but their lack of doubt. You see, true strength lives alongside humility. It questions itself. But these individuals, they are sculpted from stone. Criticism ricochets off them. Accountability, a foreign language. And what's worse, their presence feels like clarity when you're lost. They offer you a place in their kingdom, but only if you bow. And when you don't, when you dare to assert your voice, they withdraw their affection. Not loudly, quietly, strategically, until the silence itself feels like punishment. Until you bend, not because you're wrong, but because the cost of holding your ground feels unbearable. This isn't just manipulation, it's spiritual erosion. They don't want your love, they want your submission, and they will make you believe that submission is love, that obedience is growth. And while you shrink, they flourish. But it doesn't end there, because their disease is contagious, not always by force, but by proximity. Stay long enough, and their certainty infects your own doubt. You begin to mimic them. You cut off your own questions. You become what once wounded you, and you pass it on unconsciously. That's how it spreads. Through families, through workplaces, through belief systems. Not because evil is clever, but because fear is strong. Fear of exile. Fear of standing alone. Fear that without them, we are nothing. They don't need to convince you with logic. They only need to make you afraid of what life feels like without their validation. And so, you start calling your silence maturity. You start calling your surrender wisdom. You forget how to ask the most important question. Is this really who I am? And slowly, your soul folds, not with a scream, but with a whisper, until the only voice left in your head isn't yours, it's theirs. Jung saw it coming. He knew that when the human psyche seeks shelter from uncertainty, it will latch onto the nearest God figure, even if that God is hollow. And that's exactly what the inflated ego offers, a mirage of safety in exchange for your internal compass. You begin to think their words are your own. You echo their judgments. You adopt their disdain for those who question them. And in doing so, you cease to grow. Because no true transformation can happen in the shadow of someone who believes they have already arrived. But what if that shadow now lives in you? What if, in protecting yourself, you became them? Can you admit it? Can you look into the mirror and see not just the scars they left, but the ones you now leave on others? This is the horror Jung pointed to, the psychic contagion that turns victim into vessel, grief into doctrine, insecurity into dogma. And if we're not careful, we don't just inherit the trauma, we inherit the arrogance that caused it. So what do you do with that revelation? When you find their voice lingering on your tongue, their dismissiveness in your gaze? What do you do when you see that you too have begun to confuse conviction with truth? That's the moment most people retreat. It's easier to believe that evil lives only in others, but healing begins when we stop pretending our hands are clean. When we see clearly that freedom was never taken from us, it was surrendered little by little in the name of belonging. Ask yourself, how many times have you silenced your intuition to keep peace with someone who wouldn't recognize your soul, even if you screamed it? How many times have you betrayed your own clarity, your own voice, just to maintain the illusion that everything is okay? That illusion has a price, and the longer you pay it, the harder it is to remember what your voice even sounded like. But here's the truth that might hurt before it heals. Your doubt is not your enemy. It is your rescue. In a world full of those possessed by their own perfection, the simple act of questioning can be an act of revolution. So question. Question not just the world, but yourself. Peel back every layer of borrowed thought and ask, who does this belief serve? Because the day you stop asking is the day you become someone else's echo. You don't need to fight the inflated ego with violence. You only need to resist the seduction of their certainty. You only need to reclaim your right to say, I don't know, and let that be holy. Because in that moment, you are more alive than they will ever be. And when they look at you, bewildered by your refusal to bow, smile, not with pity, not with pride, but with the quiet knowing that you have remembered something sacred, that your mind is not a vessel to be filled. It is a flame. It was never theirs to extinguish. So if you've ever wondered why you feel so tired after being around them, it's because your soul has been running uphill against a gravity that was never yours. It's time to stop climbing toward their approval and start standing on your own truth. You won't always be understood, but you will be free. And in the end, freedom is not a place. It's a decision to stop living in someone else's story and start writing your own. Because no matter how convincing they seem, no one, no matter how certain, deserves the silence of your conscience.